Well, she finished a strong 40-seat second place, but not strong enough to deny Premier-designate Doug Ford a majority mandate. Let's find out how Andrea Horwath can control an untested party leader and a Premier known to have erratic tendencies. The NDP leader joins me from Toronto. I should say, just off the top, we've asked Doug Ford to appear, and he's been a bit busy, so we'll hope to get that interview not too distant future. All right, Andrea Horwath, how helpless will you be in the next 3 years or so to stop a Ford government from doing exactly what he wants to do? Can you make a difference?
Well, I think so. I mean, we have the strongest opposition bench that we've seen in Ontario in quite some time. We are going to every single day go into that legislature and fight for people. I mean, 60% of Ontarians did not vote for the kinds of cuts and pain that Doug Ford is likely to cause. And so we're going to remind him of that each and every chance we get and try to keep him on track of remembering that it's Ontario families that they should be serving, not just the wealthy and not just the big corporations.
You know, Doug Ford played it very coy when it came to saying how he would pay for a lot of the promises in his drive to balance the budget. I think we all know that's because if he told us what he was going to do, the voters probably wouldn't have voted for him. But how do you handle those deep cuts that are coming? How do you speak? You know, what do you do to stop those? You're kind of helpless, aren't you?
Well, I mean, we will be loud and ferocious in our opposition, and that will be something that he's going to have to account to the public with in a couple years' time. I mean, you're right. He didn't give us the numbers, and so we don't know where that $6 billion in cuts is coming from, or what's going to happen when the revenue tanks because he's giving all these tax breaks to his friends. And so we are going to make sure that Ontarians know that it doesn't have to be that way, that they could have had a different kind of future, and hopefully we can change things up in 4 years' time.
Have you done, has the party done or anyone done a post-mortem with you to find out why the voters gambled on Ford over your party? You know, there really were only two options after Kathleen Wynne conceded defeat. What made you fall a bit shorter, well, fall short of government, even though in the popular vote you weren't very far apart?
Yeah, in the popular vote, we weren't that far apart, but those 6 points or so made a big difference. And it was near the end of the campaign that the things seemed to turn around. And if you recall, there was a lot of really heavy negative advertising at the time. But look, the electorate made their decision, and I respect it. But I'm proud of being able to have a strong opposition bench to go after the things that people care about, like getting rid of hallway medicine and making sure our schools get repaired.
Yeah, right. The concern I heard, and I'm sure the Doug Ford negative advertising echoed that, was that the NDP would spend Ontario too deeply into deficit. Do you sense a more fiscally prudent approach might have worked better?
You know, I don't think so, because, in fact, his fiscal approach is going to bury the province. I mean, he's going to cut all kinds of revenue sources, cut all kinds of services, basically throw people under the bus and tell them that they're going to have to go it alone when life is already very, very unaffordable. So, and he's not telling us, you know, how he's going to replace that revenue with all of those tax breaks for his rich friends. So it's actually not a very fiscally responsible plan.
I'm curious, we've been hearing some pretty grim assessments earlier in this show about the Ontario auto industry if Trump goes ahead and puts a 25% tariff on auto parts and stuff. What can Ontario do, what can Ford do to get the industry, save that industry, buttress it against U.S. Trade retaliation? What could be done, or are we just at the whimsical mercy of Donald Trump's mercurial ways?
Well, I mean, I have to give credit where credit is due, and I would have done the same thing that Mr. Ford did, which was immediately indicate that he is going to stand shoulder to shoulder with the Liberal Prime Minister in their fight against these unfair tariffs. Certainly, if he has any relationships whatsoever with any of his business friends in the States, he should be getting those connections on the phone and starting to talk about, you know, how this next move on auto parts tariffs is going to impact negatively not just Ontario, but U.S. workers and families as well. So there's a lot of work he can do, probably in his business connections as well as, you know, political connections. Apparently, he's got quite a few Republican connections in the States. Maybe he should be using some of those.
What worries you most about the next 4 years?
I worry about what will happen to everyday families. They're struggling already. They can't afford more cuts. And as I said in the campaign, everyday families can't afford Ford. And I worry about that a great deal. I worry about our hospitals becoming even worse in terms of wait times. I worry about our schools not being repaired, about young people not having opportunity. And especially with these trade talks as they've been going, I have some concerns.
All right. Not exactly sunny ways ahead, according to Andrea Horwath. Appreciate you coming on, Ms. Horwath. It's always fun to have you.
Thank you so much, Don. My pleasure.